Pray with y'all.
So I guess can we just start with going over the basics of the suit?
Sure. We filed a lawsuit on behalf of Mrs. Rivers last week, and it's against the City of Homewood as well as the individual officer who was involved in the allegations. This stems from an incident that occurred on December 1st of 2016. Mrs. Rivers was in Walmart on Lakeshore Drive and was confronted by one of the Homewood police officers. And the long and short of it is that it ultimately resulted in what we have alleged is excessive force on behalf of the officer in the police department, as well as an illegal search and seizure in violation of her constitutional rights. And so we filed that lawsuit. It's called a 1983 lawsuit, which is the statute, the federal statute that it rides under. We filed it in the federal court here in Birmingham, and we are waiting on Homewood to answer.
And Ms. Rivers, why did you want to pursue this?
Because of what I went through, what I suffered, mentally, physically, the way that it changed my life, my concept of police officers, and basically my entire life, it just changed.
You said it changed. What did you used to think about law enforcement, and how has that changed today?
I had a great respect. I still do have a great respect for law enforcement. It's just that you see this happening on TV and happening to other people, and you never think about it happening to yourself. But when it does, then it hits home that anybody can be violated or abused, or it could happen to anyone.
What happened that led up to the incident?
We were walking in Walmart. We were just basically shopping.
You can talk to him about very generally.
Okay. We were basically just walking and shopping, and there was a woman walking in front of me, and I heard her. She wasn't talking to anybody, she was just talking to herself. And she said, "Oh my God, here he comes again. Is he gonna follow me through the whole store?" And I didn't know who she was talking about, so I looked to the left to see who she was talking about, and a police officer was approaching. And when she said that, I knew that something had happened between them, and I really started having compassion, and I started praying for her that whatever it was between them would resolve peacefully. And their eyes met. I could see when their eyes met. But then all of a sudden, their gaze broke, and he looked at me. And when he looked at me, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. But I saw him coming. And he did approach me. And the first thing he said was, "Do you have anything in your purse that don't belong to you?" And I just sort of looked at him, because I didn't know what he meant. And that's how it started.
So he didn't say anything else. That was the first thing he said to you.
That was the very first thing he said.
There's going to be some factual question. There's going to be a factual contest. We've obviously seen what's been said by the city as to what exactly happened leading up to these events. I can just tell you that the evidence is going to show that Mrs. Rivers wasn't running from anybody. She wasn't going anywhere. She was standing next to her buggy with her purse on her shoulder when she was approached, questioned, and frankly, ultimately physically restrained and put on the floor in such a way that was forceful. And that after that, then her purse was searched unlawfully. So the allegations are for excessive force as well as illegal search and seizure.
Ms. Rivers, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
The force that was used to put you on the floor there, the lawsuit says that you suffered some injuries that really kept you from doing what you normally do. Can you talk a little bit more about the physical effect that this had on you?
Yes. Of course, I had to go to the emergency room. And I really didn't know what was happening even in the emergency room, because I thought that I didn't want anybody to know that I was having chest pains, because I didn't know where they were coming from. But it turned out that it was a contusion to the rib. So had a real contusion. Shoulder, sprain, strain to my left thumb. As a matter of fact, I still have scars from the incident, and that's the physical part. I was in pain for weeks afterward. A contusion, a real contusion. It feels like a broken rib or a cracked rib. They feel the same. So I had to have assistance, dressing, getting up, getting down. So it's really physical, mentally, and you have to sort of excuse me because this is the first time publicly that I've talked about it. But it's something that I don't want to happen to anybody else. It's something that I didn't want to happen to me, and I certainly don't want it to happen again.
Can you describe what happened? So he came up to you and asked if there was anything in your purse. Can you describe what happened next and sort of what you said to him and kind of go from there?
He asked the question, and I looked at him because I didn't know where he was coming from. And then he asked the question again, and I went and I stood by my buggy. And it was somewhere during that point, I heard him talking to his partner, and then eventually his partner did come back there. But when we got into the middle aisle, the main aisle, not the main aisle, I'm sorry, one of those mini aisles, he reached out and he grabbed me. Excuse me. He reached out and he grabbed me, and I pulled my arm back because he didn't grab me softly, he was hurting me. So I pulled my arm back, and he said that I was under arrest. And I asked him, why was I under arrest? What did I do? Because I didn't steal anybody's wallet. And I wasn't trying to leave the store. I was just simply standing in the middle aisle, and I stood there until he came around and his buddy came. But I wasn't trying to leave. And I wasn't out of his sight. He saw me standing there. He didn't even pursue or follow me. He was talking to his buddy. And I went and stood in the middle aisle. And then one thing led to another. Physical altercation, I guess you would call it. Because he pulled me. And he pulled my arms behind my back. And the more I told him that he was hurting me, the harder he pulled.
Obviously, I know the videos have been played after the fact and when she was on the floor. Of course, her husband was also physically present and was there for the entire chain of events. I believe that it's uncontested and will be, agreed upon that there was nothing in Mrs. Rivers' purse that was allegedly stolen or anything of that sort, that she was the wrong person. I believe it will also be uncontested that there was the victim, the person who had something stolen from them that precipitated the police officers being in the Walmart, who actually came over there when Mrs. Rivers was on the floor very soon after having her been on the floor and said, that's the wrong person. And unfortunately, they left her laying there for an extended period of time after that.
Was there anything in that video that you think wasn't conveyed? Because the public saw that. Is there anything that the public couldn't have seen in that video that took place that you want them to know?
Well, I think that, Mrs. Rivers, what she just talked about was not in the video, because I think the videos all began after she was on the floor, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And so the things that she just described were the things that would not have already been in the videos.
Ms. Rivers, we heard that police had apologized to you and the family. That's what they told us. What are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like that was heartfelt? Was that not enough?
There are other things that happened. They knew that I was innocent before they ever handcuffed me. They knew I wasn't the one. They had already been informed. So my question is,
Her question, let's stay on track. Her question is they've issued an apology. But let me say this about the apology. unfortunately, accepting responsibility and apologizing are sometimes two different things. They apologize in the press, but they've never apologized in any way directly to Mrs. Rivers. Number two, accepting responsibility is more than just saying, well, we apologize, because that's, without saying any more, what I can tell you is that it's been there have been two different messages from two sides of their mouth on that issue.
They did reassign the officer. That, to you, I'm assuming is not enough.
Well, that's frankly the word that I would think of when I hear that is confusing, because they've also said they didn't do anything wrong. So I'm confused.
Okay, and so just for clarity's sake, you said they arrested the wrong person. Is that right?
I say that they left the wrong person hogtied in the middle of the floor in Walmart for an extended period of time who had done nothing wrong and was perfectly innocent. If that's your question, yes.
And for clarity's sake, I guess I was getting at, okay, so there was a woman in front of you, and you heard, oh my gosh, I wonder if they're coming after me again, or something along those lines. Do you feel that that's the woman that they were trying to arrest who may have taken something?
Well, it's impossible for Ms. Rivers to know what was going through the officer's mind when they engaged in such unreasonable conduct anyway. It's difficult to assign any type of reason when you've got an officer who engaged in this type of conduct and treats somebody the way he treated Ms. Rivers. It was inhumane, it was indecent, it was unprofessional, and it was unnecessary.
And did anything, okay, what happened to that woman?
We don't believe that the evidence is going to show that that lady was in any way believed to have been the person who stole the purse. We really don't know. We really don't know. But we don't even know if someone was ultimately arrested who was the correct person for the crime that had been alleged. We don't know that yet. Those are all things that we'll have to learn in discovery.
Okay, I was just wondering, just for clarity's sake, since she had mentioned this other woman and that she prayed for that woman, I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't think it was a situation where the lady in front of her was being chased or pursued actively for this. Although, once again, we'll have to know during discovery. But that certainly hasn't been something that has been said to us.
Mrs. Rivers, anything you want to say directly to the officer who did this to you?
No.
During the course of the lawsuit, obviously, there are going to be additional times for things to be said. We'll reserve response for that later until later.
Why do you think that officer, Ms. Rivers, was so interested in you?
Because he was looking for anyone in the store who had on a black jacket.
That's what we understand to be the case, but those are all things we'll have to hash out throughout the discovery of the lawsuit.
What do you hope the suit achieves or prevents, or?
Well, we as lawyers, we've got to operate the system within which we operating in order to seek justice and do our best to try to right wrongs. Our justice system isn't based on retribution. It's not based on vindication. It's not an eye for an eye type system, but instead we rely on juries, and we believe that juries can help us all in seeking the truth and determining what's right and helping us seek justice, and that's certainly what we expect to happen in this case.
We'd also like to believe, obviously, that even though in the court system, there are only so many different things that we can attain, right? I mean, there's only so many different types of justice that can be had. But we'd like to believe that hopefully it will garner some attention to the situation, and that this officer or any of the other officers who behave in this way, that there will be that it will limit that in the future.
Can you one more time show us your wrist and describe the injury that you got?
Let's just, on the injury side, we're going to reserve. I think we've said all we're going to say on the injury side for now.
Is the lawsuit seeking monetary damages and medical bill losses?
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you know, in the system we have in the United States, once again, it's not an eye for an eye system. It's not the only type of justice that we can seek in the civil courts is, you know, monetary based. And of course, once again, we'd like to believe that there are collaborative ways that the lawsuit helps make sure that this doesn't happen again. But that is right. It's you know, mental anguish, pain and suffering, medical bills, things of that nature are what we claim in the civil case, and it's all that we can claim under the circumstances.
You think the officer should have been fired?
Well, you know, how they choose to, you know, administer punishment to their officers for the various degrees of things that they foresee as wrong, but is frankly within their rights. But what I'll tell you is that since this came about, the public response has been that they apologize, but the more private response has been we did nothing wrong. So that's the way it is.
And at the very least, they should accept responsibility for wrong action here.
Do you think that the apology would have come, the reassignment would have happened had there not been a Facebook Live video?
You know, I can't speak to that. I can't speak to that. You know, again, when you got somebody engaged in such unreasonable behavior, when you got a department that takes such an unreasonable position, when you got individuals who on the one hand say we apologize, but on the other hand we did nothing wrong. When you got an individual who wants to apologize but doesn't even reach out to Ms. Rivers and give her a personal apology, or her husband a personal apology, who had to sit there and watch this play out for 30, 45 minutes. It's unfathomable in my mind to try to come up with explanations for what we're going through those folks' minds. All I know is it's unreasonable, it's unconstitutional, it's unlawful, and we want to do something about it.
Mr. Rivers, what was going through your mind at that moment, when those moments when you were on the ground?
Honestly, I was trying my best to stay alive. I didn't want to go to Homewood City Jail because I'd heard all of the rumors, so I didn't want to go.
What were the officers doing while you were on the ground?
Well, I think it's kind of tough for her to probably say that because she's handcuffed on the ground. But I mean, I think the video makes pretty clear what the officers were doing at the time. Standing around and certainly nobody was trying to undertake any type of investigation to make sure that they could limit this thing, cut it off as soon as possible, issue an apology to Ms. Rivers for having gone through all of this, and release her and allow her to leave.
How long, Mr. Rivers, were you on the ground for? Was that time?
Forever. Forever.
It was
That's what it felt like.
it was a good while. I mean, it was a good while.
And then what happened after that? Did they really unhandcuff you, release you, or?
Someone did come and undo the handcuffs. I don't know who he was. I don't know where he came from. But I had asked for a long time to undo the handcuffs so that I could get up. But I don't know who he was. He must have been, I don't know, a supervisor or something.
And then did you drive yourself to the hospital for your injuries?
My husband drove me.
And you went that day right after?
Yes.
All right. Anybody? I think that's about it. Anybody has any?
I got one more quick one. You know, it's been a couple of months since this took place, and I know it's been really hard for you to come and to speak publicly like this. What's in your heart right now?
It's filled with different emotions. I mean, I'm still angry, very angry, heartbroken, and I guess part of that is because I never thought that anything like this would happen to me. You know, not saying that I'm better than anyone else, because I'm not. It's just that it's just something you don't expect. You don't expect it to happen until it does.
What would you say to the naysayers who say that you didn't comply with officers and their commands? What would you say to them?
Let it hit home. Let it hit home. eventually somebody will know somebody else. You'll know a family member, you'll know a sister, you'll know a daughter, you'll know a cousin, you'll know a friend.
And obviously, that's one of the things that has been said to the press was that she was trying to get away or didn't comply with the orders of the officer. And we're going to let that play out, but I can just tell you that that's going to be contested, very much so.
Do you mind saying and spelling or saying your names for our viewers on Facebook Live who are asking?
Sure, Brett Turnbull. This is Mrs. Brenda Rivers.
Tyrell Jordan.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rivers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.